want to talk a little bit more about leads. Aside from the simplicity, one thing to keep in mind is you want to keep the latest news in the lead. You know, a lot of times stories have multiple days that they're in the news. For example, a story might start off on Monday, being that there was a murder or a burglary or something, and then the next day it might be that the person that was shot in the burglary died, and the next day it might be that they've arrested somebody, and the next day it might be they charged them, and the next day it might be the person posted bond. I mean, you know, a lot of times these stories go, flow over and over and over again. But the key is to keep the latest news in the lead. Make sure people know, hey, this isn't the story I read yesterday. This is something new, and keep the newest information. And don't just because you've written it 3 times assume, you want all the information, you want the whole history of the story, but you don't want that in the lead. You want what's newest and latest. As an example, as I said, a murder, just last week, a few days ago, there were 7 murders within a 24-hour period in St. Louis, Illinois, St. Louis, Missouri. And one of them was at a hotel where the robber killed the front desk clerk. And one of the things about that was newsworthy, one of the things about that story that it started off and this guy killed him. There were a bunch of murders, but the fact is this is a kind of a decent area, decent hotel, very nice hotel, and they shot and killed this clerk. It was kind of a big story, especially that just because of where it is and everything, and so there were multiple cycles, and finally they arrested the guy. But the case is, you don't want to constantly be talking about how this guy was killed. You want to talk about the guy being arrested for doing it. You want to get the latest news. And so if you follow that, every time they would update it and there would be new information. The key is emphasize information that's news. Don't give too much information. Don't just give lists. Don't state obvious things. Don't say things that are negative. Try to say something that's actually going to happen. While I told you to emphasize and play up things, don't exaggerate things. Be fair. Don't be just teasing and being over the top. The other thing is to remember, you're trying to write for the readers, so you want to give them what they actually care about, what's local. And don't be afraid to write the lead 3 or 4 times. Don't be afraid to write it 3 or 4 times and think about it and finally decide what you want to do. And sometimes you'll write it one way, you'll change it. That means you have to change several paragraphs because you mentioned information in the lead. You don't want to mention it 3 times or restate it. Don't be afraid to change it. The key is you're trying to get the information to the reader quickly and get the reader to read the entire story. Now, as far as it goes, I think what I'm going to do, although I'm not sure, I think on the syllabus I had we were going to do both chapters 8 and 9. I'm going to talk a little bit about chapter 9, probably more on Wednesday. But there's a variety of types of leads. What I was talking about basically was the news lead, the basic news lead, which just gives you basic information. There are other types of leads that oftentimes will fall on news stories, but oftentimes more on feature stories or stories that are, taking a little bit more of a distant approach to the fact. And these might be things where you start with a question or a quote, or you try to start with suspense or description. There's various types, and so my next video, which I will probably really talk about on Monday, will be about all those different types of leads.